I'm not gonna lie. The trailer for this did have me a little worried and concerned, but you know what? You know what? Sometimes the trailer's not great and the movie ends up being pretty great.
We are the homie!
Don't know, take my power, my power, my power. Don't know.
And today we have The Woman King. I was a bit worried about this one at first because the trailers dropped, and boy did they drop. And then the title and who all was in it, that's all well and good. The cast excited me, the premise was intriguing, but this is a weird double-edged sword for me. I love dominant and powerful women. I do. This review might seem to contradict that in spots, but I want that to be very well known. When it comes to real life, but also film and cinema, I love very well written female characters. I love when women are empowered up to the same degree, if not more so, than men. I love just a strong woman, right? Just in every sense of the word. That being said, like, when you name your movie The Woman King, like, not that there's anything wrong with it being Woman King, but from a marketing perspective, it felt patronizing or pandering. I don't know. I know that seeing the movie and getting the context that the Woman King is an actual thing in that culture, that kind of made more sense. But when I first saw the trailer, I was like, oh, are they just trying to sell the idea of women? Which I wasn't a fan of that. The trailers and the title had me concerned because I was worried that, like, from a corporate or a Hollywood perspective, they were trying to do what films often do, which is, oh, come check out these women go kick ass. Like 355. Perfect example of this premise being executed horribly. Every actor in this film, all these gals, they're great on their own. But in that movie, God, was that movie just bad and boring. But no, I gotta say, this didn't quite do that. I was pleasantly surprised. Woman King was directed by, I want to say, Gina, so there's a hyphen in there, Gina Prince Bythewood, but Gina over here directed this. Not too many years ago, she did on Netflix The Old Guard, a movie that I've heard is good, but it's been in my queue, just sitting there, collecting dust. If you go back further, stuff like The Secret Life of Bees. So it's just some of her directorial credits that you might know her from. I always do casts right after director, and it also kind of segues into one of the first pros I have about the film, because the cast, for the most part, the cast is like 95% stellar. When it comes to the women, the cast is killer in this, and they truly deliver. Viola Davis. I mean, come on, Viola Davis, just anything you put Viola Davis in, it's like, wow, just honestly, every single one of the female ensemble cast, they're all worth giving credit and mention to. I just don't have time to go through each and every one, but the main three, I suppose. My personal favorite, played by Lashana Lynch, she was my favorite character in this. Been in a lot of other stuff, and then we have Thusa Mbedu, if I had to guess, Thusa Mbedu. Apologies, I don't mean to butcher the names here. She's the arguably the, you want to say main protagonist, but I almost feel like her and Viola are both the protagonists to this film, but she's the one being inducted into this group of female warriors, and we're kind of following her journey. So I guess you could say she's the lead, but just barely, if not anything, kind of on the same level as Viola's character. This movie was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Not to say that I thought it was going to be bad per se, I don't know, there's a lot of aesthetics out there that I like. In terms of this aesthetic, where it's kind of just like dirt, plains, jungle, deserts, wildlife, safaris, I could have fun with it. I'm sure if I traveled, I might enjoy it, but visually speaking, and from just a point of aesthetic, that setting isn't overly intriguing to me. I respect it, and I get that's where we all came from, but it's not an aesthetic or a setting I'm a huge fan of. So seeing that where this film was going to take place, I was just kind of, from the offset, I was, we'll see how this goes. But I gotta say, as this film carried on, it was in it for the most part. I I didn't love this film, but I actually really enjoyed my time with it. Where the film shines for sure are star protagonists, these warrior women and all that, and I was actually surprised at how much I cared about their plight, their struggle, their story, kind of I always love, tale as old as time, the old rank and file in this monarchy and all that, and it's people that are trying to service the kingdom while also trying to help their own needs and help those they care about within their own ranks, and honor and perseverance and emotion and justice and just all these conflicting priorities and ideologies, and you get to see that play out both with a gal who has struggled and is now trying to become a soldier, and other characters that are soldiers and are already in this mindset, but obviously still have a human side, and that human side is shown. The usual important messages about female empowerment, about empowerment of people of color, about obviously the horrific things that came from slavery, and that comes from imprisonment and sexual assault, and there goes over trauma, and just a lot of different subjects like that are all breached in this film, and I think they're all handled fairly well. Funny enough, the weaker part about this film for me are the male leads, aside from John Boyega, who's great as the king that he plays in this, but the love interest, I got that he was kind of like supposed to be a love interest and also help our main character, but he felt unnecessary in this movie. And if anything, maybe he's for the female gaze. Who am I to judge? Like, I get it. Sure, muscles make muscles, and he's a handsome, suave young man who's idealistic and trying to return back home to his roots and all this, but I felt like if he wasn't in the movie wouldn't suffer. If anything, it just maybe wouldn't be bogged down by his B-plot storyline. I don't know. That's a bit of a con. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. He did a great job. I just didn't think he was necessary in the film. I was also concerned because going into this, I knew it was going to be PG-13 and not an R rating, so how brutal could it be? They pushed the PG-13 for sure. There isn't, blood and limbs flying all around and people getting their fucking throats ripped out and shit, but it gets pretty close. Plenty of throats slit, people stabbed, people shot, killed, bleeding out, getting tortured and all this. They definitely, it's a very hard PG-13. I wouldn't be surprised if there was even an unrated cut out there somewhere. But for what they had and what they had to work with, the direction and the cinematography for these fights, and for the film in general, it's good. For the fights, it's pretty good. There are moments where things get a little shaky and a tiny bit hard to follow because key characters start getting interchanged and it's hard to kind of track some people in some of the fights, but overall it's handled well and I was never completely lost. And the choreography, I think I heard the Old Guard had similar pros to it in this regard. The choreography for the fights is great. The sound effect of, just these metal weapons clanging and hitting each other, and the versatility of everybody's combat, both in how they move as people and how they use their weapons and all this, and they use varied weapons. It's all period authentic. The combat's pretty fun to watch. I wouldn't say it's some of the best fight scenes of the year. I don't have an itch to go back and rewatch those fight scenes, but for what they handled it very well, and it was, in the moment, it was enjoyable, and I was in it, and they were some solid fights, And the story was actually good. I wasn't sure what the story was going to be precisely, but there were some, I'm not going to ruin it in case you want to watch it, but there's some solid emotional threads, and, it tries to tug at your heartstrings a little bit. I cared about the characters. I had a feeling who was going to die and who was going to live, and you kind of have a feeling how the story's going to go, so it's predictable for the most part. But still, even though the narrative is predictable, the script is good enough, and the actors are phenomenal. They bring this power and presence to the scenes. It just drives these scenes and makes it very engaging and enjoyable whenever these dialogue or combat or emotionally charged moments are going on. The only negative things I really have to say, I didn't think the guy needed to exist. I think his story, you could have still had the whole slaver thing, and the third act still happened without him being a prevalent force. I get why he was part of it. I understand that. Some of the conflict just felt like it could have been avoided here or there. I don't know. The narrative progression didn't feel airtight, but that's just a smaller gripe, honestly. Film slows down in some moments here or there. Nothing that would bog it down too terribly much, but the best way I can put it is that this movie is like almost 2.5 hours. It's like, without credits, I'm sure it's about 2 hours 10 minutes, but I don't know if we needed to make it 2 hours. It could have been maybe closer to, maybe cut like 10 minutes out, maybe like an hour 45. That would have been pretty tight and solid. Would have polished it up, cut out the unnecessary stuff, and then just really focused on these gals and their story. But again, I don't know, I'm torn, because in terms of quality of a film, it checks all the boxes, aside from the couple complaints that I had. It just, in terms of my enjoyment, I enjoyed it, but it still lacked that wow factor. Like, it didn't really stand out to me. It just kind of, it performed well, and in some scenes it performed very well. And I don't really know how else to put that in words, aside from just that's literally me coming at it from my personal enjoyment. Honestly, I'm just inherently biased, and I probably just would have preferred it if it was even more emotional, even more intense, if the combat was even more brutal, maybe something like that, or maybe if the script was even better. Because it's really good. I can tell it's a really good film, but in my heart of hearts, it wasn't fantastic. I was actually very torn about this rating, because this is one of those situations where, even though I didn't love it, I do want to make sure to still give it I still want to give it its day in court here, and make sure that I give it credit where credit's due in terms of quality of a film. So, weighing it all out there, trying not to spoil the film too much, but giving you a general idea. It's a good time. It could be worth it in theaters, I think, and it's always nice to support the arts and support. I always personally love to support people of color in their films, just films in general, but I love to see this representation, especially specifically women of color, so I'm here for it for sure. It's worth a shot in theaters. It's fun. It's not perfect. I'm not gonna go ranting and raving about, oh my god, this movie is so fucking awesome, you have to go see it, but it's definitely worth a watch. It's really good. I just don't see myself maybe revisiting it too much. It just kind of, I think it's because it's formulaic, it's a bit rudimentary in terms of its plot, and the action, while good, could have been even better. But that's just from where I'm coming from with my bias. I think you're going to see these really cool women kick ass and fight for what they care about, and also bring these wonderful, incredible performances to screen, as they always do. I gotta be fair, I gotta give it this barely made the cusp of it, but a low 4 out of 5. I give it a low 4 out of 5. I almost gave it a high 3, but just only saying this film was above average, I think, is a disservice to the performances and effort and the actual quality the film does deliver upon. But yeah, that was my review of The Woman King. What did you think? Comment below as always. Otherwise, stay tuned for the next episode of whatever movie I review. And goodbye, travelers.